In this video, we'll be dealing with another security measure, which is hashing our users' passwords. So as you can see, we're currently storing the passwords in plain text. So this means that anyone with access to our database can access the user's account. So what we're going to do is hash our passwords before we store them in the database. This means that no one except the user, not even the authentication system itself, is going to know the true password. Now, for a user to log in, they're going to have to supply their password, and then on the server, we hash it again. And if the new hash matches what's stored in the database, we know that the password is correct, and the user will be authenticated. We could simply use a hashing algorithm like SHA-256 to hash our passwords. But unfortunately, that alone won't be secure enough. You see, one of the vulnerabilities of password hashing is what's known as a rainbow table attack. And this is where a hacker creates a massive lookup table of common passwords and their hashes in the common hashing algorithms. So what they would do if they got access to a database like ours, they could go through and compare each of the hash passwords to one in their lookup table. And if someone uses a common password, which they often will, the hacker may be able to find a match. So there's a hashing library called bcrypt, which basically mitigates this kind of attack. And it does this by salting passwords. And that ensures that the hashes that are stored in the database are now so unique that it's very, very unlikely that they'll be found in any rainbow table. So the process for actually hashing a password like this is fairly complex, but thankfully all we need to do is install bcrypt and make sure we run our passwords through it before we add them to our database. Let's begin by installing bcrypt and saving as a dependency. So it's actually bcrypt.js. With bcrypt now installed, let's go ahead and implement password hashing. So the best place in the code to do this is on the user model, right before it's saved to the database. So to do this, we can utilize another Mongoose feature, which is save hooks. So these are functions that run on a document anytime it's saved. So there's two types of save hooks. There's pre or post, meaning we can run our custom code right before a document is saved or right after. So in our case, we want to use a pre-hook as we want to perform the hashing right before the record is saved. So to begin with, let's go ahead and require bcrypt in our user model by going const bcrypt equals require, and it's bcrypt.js. Now we're going to add a pre-save hook. So let's come down here, and we're going to call a method on the user schema object, and this one's called pre. Now it takes two arguments. The first one is a string that tells Mongoose what model function this pre-hook should be applied to. So in our case, that's going to be save. And the second argument is the callback function for this hook. So let's create a regular async function, and we're going to pass an argument called next. Now, much like the middleware that we created in our Express app, the next function must be called at some point in this method or the process will never complete. So one thing to keep in mind is that a save hook is going to be called not only when a document is created, but also when it's updated. Now we only want to hash the password when the password field is being modified. So we'll begin the body with this conditional. We'll go if this dot is modified, is modified, not is mobile phone, and we pass in a string to specify which field, and that's going to be password. So we'll actually make this an if-else block, and in the else we can just simply call next if the password's not being modified. Alright, now up in the if here, we're going to create a try-catch block. And the reason we do that is that bcrypt is going to throw an error if it fails, and we want to be able to handle that. So in the try block, let's go ahead and override our password property. So we can go this.password, and we'll await a call to bcrypt. Oops, bcrypt. And we're going to use the hash method of bcrypt. Now the hash method takes two arguments. So firstly, the string that you want to hash, and that's obviously going to be this.password. Now the second argument to the hash method is the length of the salt that you want to use. So remember that salting is the process of adding a secret string to a hash. Now bcrypt will actually automatically generate a salt, unlike the JSON Web Token package where we had to choose our own. So all we have to do is indicate the length of the salt that we want as an integer. Now the reason you can specify it is because obviously the longer your salt is, the slower the computation is going to be. But obviously it'd make it more secure. So let's go ahead and we'll make it 8 characters long. Alright, so with that done, all we need to do is call next. And we'll also call next in the catch block and pass the error into that like that. Let's now test the password hashing in Postman. So we'll open up our post users request and make sure you've got a unique email in the body and then run it. Now if you check out the users table, take a look at the last created document here. Well, actually the second last one is, you can see the plain text password, but in the last one you see this big long hashed value instead of the plain text password. So that's cool. One of the quirks of the Mongoose save hooks is that they don't work with bulk inserts like with this insert many function here that we're using in our database seed. So that means the users that we create here by using insert many, they're not going to have hash passwords. So what we're going to have to do is manually save each user in this function rather than using insert many. Now this is fairly trivial to do since there's only 2 users. So what we can do is just go await new user and pass in seed users, the first one, and then we just call save. And I'll copy that line and we'll do it for the second one there as well. Another approach that you could take to that would be to use a for each or something like that. One other thing I want to do is make a change to our post users test, in particular the should create a new user test. So what we want to do is check that the password in the created user is hashed. So to do this, let's go to the point of the test where we load the new user from the database, which is just down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add another assertion. And we're going to go expect doc.password. So remember that doc is the user that's just been created. And now we're going to use the not modifier before this assertion. And then we're going to go to be user password. So this is really not a very exact assertion, but it's quite complicated to actually test the specific hash. So this assertion here, it'll at least tell us if the password hashing is not being applied. So it's probably better than nothing. So what we should do now is run the test suite again to make sure everything works. And all our tests are passing, so let's end the video here.